requirements both on the student side as well as on the administrative side within the university to be able to actually get these people enrolled into whatever they're actually wanting to learn. And we all laugh about Excel, but on the other hand, to be honest, I believe that there are many, many universities worldwide that are actually doing continuing ed in Excel, because the fact is that over the last 20 years or so, these pieces or these departments within schools have actually operated by themselves on their own, somewhere in the corner, being almost invisible to the main institution, and on the other hand, actually have done really well in their own sense. But let's say, I'm not going to actually say that the pandemic actually caused everything that we ever actually met with, but I will say that in the last 5 years or so, continuing education is becoming far more mainstream than before. And with that, challenges like user access to systems, security, management of payment, and everything else with it becomes something which becomes too big to manage in Excel. And this is what we're actually seeing at a number of institutions. And INSEAD, as a business school, has been on the front row of this for many years already, because they don't offer traditional education at all. Their business model is continuing education. So they've actually already had issues with this far earlier than many others have had, but as we at least see it, more and more institutions are focusing more and more either through legislation or because they're actually, their president tells them to, or because the world asks of them that they offer more continuing education than before, and with that comes the pressure of IT being able to support them and everything else that comes with it to actually be able to scale up. Now, from a student perspective, we really want to actually create something which is, as we say, see, buy, learn, whereby we actually are able to get the student to be learning what he wants to learn as quickly as possible. And this is, keep this in mind, because this is actually the basis of all that we've actually done. If you look at what actually is continuing education, at the absolute basic for us is, it's a transaction between a person buying a product. Now, I don't want to go into the whole shopping cart discussion that we've had for 20 years with Campus Solutions, but in essence, if you look at what we're doing when we're doing continuing education, is we are actually asking a person to buy a product. And that product may be pre-recorded video, it may be a coaching conversation, it may be a piece of online education, it may be actually sitting in class for 20 weeks with some other people as well. It's all kinds of things. It's no longer just actually buying a class for the next 35 weeks. It is far broader than that, so to say. But in all, it is a person buying a product. And that is a transaction by itself. And if you boil it down to that, suddenly lots of things that actually are normal, quote, quote, in Campus Solutions, and be aware we are also an implementation partner for universities and so on, so I'm very aware of how admissions and student records and everything else works. But if you boil it down, you don't need all that. You need a person who needs to buy a product in a transaction. And that's the only thing you actually really would like to support. Because if you're thinking about somebody buying a hobby course, or somebody buying a coaching conversation with the smartest man on earth, but it's going to take 2 hours only, are you really going to pull this person through admissions and student records and enroll him into a class or something like that to actually get that 2-hour conversation going? No. Well, rather not, if possible. So the person buys product in a transaction is really the basis of it all and actually drives the whole conversation around what this tool actually does, or what this functionality does within Campus, the way we actually are using it. It offers flexible educational product offering, so it offers the ability within Campus to actually offer a set of products, whatever those may be, that you actually would like to offer. Instant enrollment, we don't really actually speak about enrollment in a systematic manner. It's not enrollment, and it doesn't have to be enrollment because it's just a way of thinking about a business process, right? So in that sense, it's not really important. Program completion requirements are important. Some of the continuing education is actually offered to get either to a micro-credential, a certificate. Somebody may actually, over the course of 5 years, buy 15 courses and in the end get a particular degree for a particular bachelor program or something like that. So it is important to track if people are in the end moving towards a particular direction. And also, if you're more from the marketing perspective, tracking what people have done also means that you can actually target them to actually sell them something else. And for those who know us, we're not a selling company in general, so I don't actually focus on selling as such at all. But if you think about continuing education and having a long-term relationship with somebody, it's good to know what they have done before so that you can actually give them the best service possible going forward. So keeping track of student history, keeping track of what they actually have done before, keeping track of the requirements, all very important. Now, financial information and billing is actually unbelievably important. And also, in the sense of, and I will show you in a moment, for instance, INSEAD, unbelievably complex. If you are selling to the whole world, then suddenly you're actually focusing on 15, 20, 30, 50 different tax regimes. And I am sure that is the case for Europe, and I am almost 100% sure that this will become the case for everybody everywhere in the world, because governments are starting to notice that there are billions of money floating through the universe to actually sell education. And at the moment, governments are not getting tax, at least not in a number of countries yet, because education is actually free of charge. But that normally doesn't count for somebody who comes from a completely different continent or actually comes from a different country in many cases and so on. So taxing and billing and invoicing becomes a really unbelievably complex process, so to say. So as part of the solution, we've actually built a tax module that actually calculates how much tax this particular person or company needs to pay for this education. And be aware, if you look at INSEAD, for instance, some of the stuff they're selling costs $500,000. So it's not only about a few dollars here and there, it's also companies saying, I've got 10 managers who would like to actually come in and buy something from you, so boom, this is the full bill. And then it actually gets interesting for the company as well to say, am I going to pay with my US subsidiary, or am I going to pay with my, wherever I'm in Singapore or wherever I am with my other pieces of my company. So all that taxing and all that stuff with it is becoming unbelievably important for institutions as the volumes grow of what they sell. Now, I said it in the beginning and I'm going to say it again. We bypass probably 80% of what normally happens. We don't do admissions. We don't do academic program. We don't do academic plan. We don't do student enroll. We don't do term activation. And still, we don't do anything with classes normally, unless you would like to. But in the end, we are still able to actually capture who you are, get you onto your course, be able to track if you're actually attending yes or no, giving you a grade at the end and even a certificate if you like. And it's not all bolt on. So INSEAD as a program, I would actually really like to talk about them for 1 minute. So INSEAD as an institution actually has worldwide campuses. Runs, as you can see, relatively small numbers of traditional students and executive programs, but when you look at the numbers in amounts, it is actually quite astounding. And the other piece is, and that's the most interesting one of all actually, when the pandemic actually hit, these people lost 95% of their revenue within 2 weeks, because their revenue model was completely based on high-level management coming to INSEAD in Paris, Abu Dhabi, Singapore, or in Wharton to actually study at the university. And with, of course, all the travel restrictions, nobody was going anywhere. So they literally lost almost everything that they had in literally in a couple of weeks. So they had to completely turn around their own business model, and then with that business model change, also change the system behind it to actually make it all work again. So they've went in a couple of months from high-end selling of education on-site to a small number of people to large online courses for a large number of people at relatively low cost, and a completely different way of actually interacting with their students. And with, as said, the humongous task on the educational side, it also meant that the systems needed to be adjusted. And they've been running Campus Solutions since 2006. They had actually normally, they used admissions and student records and everything else, but then at that point said, okay, we have to change the model here because it's not going to work anymore. It's just far too much work for somebody to actually administer all of that for those few hours that somebody's going to be at the institution. So that's what we did. So we looked at the way that they actually offer their online programs and talked about, okay, how are we going to actually manage this model differently? As said, virtual classes, lots of automation around invoices, because invoices is not difficult if you have 200, but if you have 25,000, it suddenly becomes a completely different story, so to say. And also the onboarding process actually needed to be changed as such. So deliverables that we actually had were, okay, we want to actually create an extended portfolio of products that we would like to offer to the world. We need to actually get people on board very quickly so that they can actually apply and pay and actually enroll in literally minutes if possible. Very important side effect was the fact that they need to actually anonymize information. Lots of the people that are coming to this institution actually need to be anonymized once they have actually studied at the university. So anonymization became a side note that actually needed to be adjusted as such. And as mentioned, billing and taxation actually is seriously difficult if you're managing lots of campuses worldwide and lots of people who are actually buying education from other places in the world, so to say. Process-wise, a user nowadays goes to the website of INSEAD, actually chooses what he would like to actually study. When he does, he actually goes to the front end of the process, which is in this case for INSEAD at least Salesforce. Doesn't have to be, but they chose Salesforce as their front end for actually choosing their programs. You actually go through the application process in Salesforce, and once you have actually gone through the different steps of the process, and in their case, as you can see, in some cases it actually is a pretty long process. On the other hand, there's also a number of plans and programs, a number of programs that they offer whereby they have just a few questions, so to say. And once they have actually applied, the information goes into Campus Solutions and actually lands within our framework, where we actually then manage the transaction that actually governs the person buying a product. So we're not actually focusing on other pieces. We're actually focusing on the transaction as being the basis of what we actually do. I'll be showing this in a moment in the system, so I'm just flipping through it for a moment, and I'll get back to this one as well, so we at least can. I'll explain it when I actually get to it, because I'm going to get to it again and manage it then when we're doing the demo. So, building blocks of the tool as such are 4 pieces. And as you can see, all of those, if you're actually familiar with Campus in a broader sense, are all standard functionality. Program enrollment, campus community, event management, and student financials. All just standard functionalities in the system. And within those 4 blocks, we're actually managing the product catalog, we're managing the study progress of the students, we're managing grades, we're managing personal information within campus community, we're managing notifications, we're managing 3Cs, we're managing within event management, Campus Solutions, event management, we're managing the product offering, we're managing the transactions, we're managing attendance tracking, and then from a student financials point of view, we're actually managing the actual financial transaction as well as all the tax management. And yes, we put in a little sauce here and there to actually make it all link up. But if you look at the amount of code versus what we actually are what we are using from vanilla, it is probably 80 to 85% is actually vanilla, and the rest are the little pieces in between that make it all actually hook up. But the beauty is, all of these pieces are in any database from Campus Solutions. I didn't do anything on this, honestly not. So, and this is the cool part and the cool slide for me. Because if you're using Campus Solutions to do this process, this is what you get for free, quote, quote. Because it's also in Campus. There is automatic self-service for students. There is user account management. There is certification, grading, attendance tracking. the whole thing is already there. So next to your core process of being able to apply, enroll, grade, and actually bill people, there's lots of other stuff in your system that is already actually available because you're in Campus anyway. And the same counts for integrations to your learning management system, your Microsoft Active Directory, your library systems, or whatever else you actually have connected to Campus, which is probably a list longer than I can think of. And all of those things are already there because you need them for your main education. So using it again for continuing ed is not complex at all because the integrations are already in place. And these people are no different than the traditional student. They just actually do something which is smaller in many cases and is not focused on actually getting a degree perhaps, but who cares? The process is almost the same. So really important in that context that Campus actually delivers those options. Now, when we defined and had discussions about how this model should work, we said it's not going to be the same for everybody. And therefore, we need a different models or different ways of actually getting to the piece of the puzzle that actually is the continuing education module. So we have created a application form framework within Campus, fluid-based, configurable, flexible, and that actually allows people to actually apply through that particular application form and actually buy education. We are also able to actually have web service integration, like we're doing at INSEAD, for instance, where Salesforce manages the actual CRM process and Campus manages the student process, so to say. So we're integrating with web services. We're actually doing the same at DTU in Denmark, where we're actually having an integration to WooCommerce, thank you, yes. I always actually forget what it's called, but biggest web shop in the world, Ernst, yes, I know. Web service integration is really important because in many cases institutions already have systems that actually sell stuff. Be it WooCommerce, be it a Salesforce or whatever, there are many institutions that have tools that actually do CRM or sales-like activities already, so why not use those and actually then connect to the model as such. File processing, one more time if you're Excel. File processing is unbelievably important because in many cases, companies send you an Excel with 50 names, with a first name, last name, email address, and say these 50 nurses need to actually go to this particular class for the next 4 weeks. That's all you're going to get, the first name, the last name, and the email address, but that is what they would like you to actually enter into the system. Now, 50 is still okay-ish, but 250 becomes really annoying if you have to type it all in. So file processing is really a focus where we actually have made a very flexible framework that you can actually use to load files and process those files into the module to actually create people, create accounts, create events, create event enrollments and everything else with it. So the actual full process, which you would normally maybe manage with a web service or manage through your application form, is then managed through a file with a number of transactions happening once that file hits the system. Last but not least, it's still possible, of course, to actually enter a manual transaction if necessary. But funny enough, once you start to think in bigger volumes, manual entry becomes an exception to the rule. It's of course important that people can interact with the system, but in general you would like to have this process be as easy and flexible as possible. One architecture slide, just actually to give you an idea about how this actually is managed. Just a few examples there. A website where an actor, a person actually gets to the website first. From the website they go to the CRM system. Once they're in the CRM system and they've actually applied, they go, and this counts for all of our model. We actually always go through search match to actually then end up in the continuing education module in PeopleSoft. If there's one thing I've learned from INSEAD over the years, it's the fact that if you have proper personal data, that is worth more than anything. These people actually spend, I don't know how much time every week to make sure that anybody that hits any of their systems is actually identified and actually uniquely identified so that they actually are knowing that this person is either new to them or existent. If you've spent $500,000 or more and the next day you actually try to apply for yourself and nobody knows who you are anymore, it doesn't feel right, so to say. So it's very important to make sure that the people that you actually onboard through any of these forms, CRMs, files, whatever, that you understand who they are, because you would like a long-term relationship with them, because it's a continuing education in that context. So search match is really key to the whole puzzle to make sure that actually that is managed well. And then in the module itself, we're actually transposing or actually sending back and forth product data to the website and to the CRM system to be able to actually sell stuff while we're also getting information back. In some scenarios, people are actually managing their products first in the CRM. They're floating out on their website to see if they actually would like to buy something or not. If there's interest, then the product actually goes to campus, becomes a product in campus, people start to buy, and then we actually go that way. So it's all interchangeable, so to say, and with it, we are actually able to offer a really, I would say, proper process. Now, here I go. let me change this. Let me show you how this works. I've chosen for today to actually start from the application form. Voila. From the application form, in this case, the storefront, so to say, the intent here is to say, okay, if somebody is on the external website, actually sees a particular type of program or course that they would like to actually study, they click on the link sends them to PeopleSoft, because you're looking at PeopleSoft over here. They actually send them to PeopleSoft public page, boom, storefront, where they can actually then say, okay, I would like to actually study, for instance, photography. Why did I choose that word? Photography for beginners to actually to study, so to say. We are able then to actually offer them also some extra courses that they may like, based on tags, based on other types of interest, things they've bought before, whatever, and so on. And then once they've actually chosen what they want, they actually go to their checkout, and when they go to checkout, they end up in a sign-in page for Campus Solutions. Either signing in as a guest or signing in as a user that already exists. And if I actually, for a moment, reading glasses required. This is a time when you actually think, okay, what was the name of the person that I already actually chose here? I'll just do it this way. Yes, we normally sign in with our email address, but I honestly do not remember the first name of the person anymore that I created for this. But when we actually sign in, Jack Brown, thank you, Ernst. When we sign in, we get to an application form that is completely flexible. The number of pages, the number of fields, the look and feel of the pages, everything is actually up to the institution to decide. And interestingly enough, as you saw in the picture, Salesforce is now actually, at the moment, the sole entry point for INSEAD for applications, but we're going to change that and offer this next to Salesforce as the other way of actually getting into campus, because the Salesforce forms are actually less flexible than we are. So it's actually easier for them to create some extra forms for specific products in here so that they can actually ask less questions than they normally ask and actually get people enrolled earlier. Now, I was not going to actually create a whole application form because there's too much other things I would like to show. So I'm just going to jump in to the back end of the system here to actually show you what things look like when people have submitted an application. So the continuing education module in the end consists of a product offering whereby we actually are offering products to people. We actually have the actual purchase management where we are managing the fact that people are buying a product and they go through search match, and then once they've gone through search match, they actually are an ample ID in the system and they have a transaction that shows what they've bought. Then we have enrollment management where we actually are managing the fact that they're enrolled and if possible or if needed, that they actually get graded and get progressed through their studies, so to say, and then within finance, we actually manage their finance. Now, I thought it may be handy. Yes, I like Kibana better than pivot grids, but it worked really well for this particular number here. So I thought it would be handy to actually take you through the process on the basis of this pivot grid over here. So when you actually apply and you are not automatically automatically recognized as being new or being an existing person, you actually end up in our staging area as a search match case. And if I actually go there for a second, when you've applied, is it readable, guys? I hope so. And otherwise, I can make it a little bigger. Readable, not readable? Bigger, please. No problem at all. Better? Not better, good enough? Please do say good enough or not, but because there's nothing more irritating than looking at a screen like, what is that? Yeah, sorry. So when you are applying and you are in search match, you don't have an ample ID yet. As you know, it's no different than actually managing things through AWS, for instance. The whole constituent transaction model is behind this. I didn't do anything else except for actually merging all the information on one page, but the actual constituent management module is completely behind this. There's nothing different than what you would do normally with AWS. The only thing that's different is that we actually sell you products instead of actually giving you an application. So we're taking the constituent module from Campus Solutions and we're adding on our own transaction model to actually manage transactions. Because in this case, you can read that this person has actually bought 2 products, and now comes the magic. Who is actually paying for that particular transaction? If you look at continuing education, I'm not sure if you have the same experience as we have, but in many, many cases, companies buy for students, or parents buy for students, or friends buy for students in the form of a voucher or whatever it is. And in those kinds of cases, the person who is paying is no longer the person who is actually enjoying education. So in our model, we are completely separating who is enrolled from who is paying for the fact that the person is enrolled. But it's all actually managed in one transaction to make sure that the person cannot enroll unless the payment actually happens. And as you can see, there's a little icon over here. This is not something that Oracle normally delivers, but we have actually built this. This is a company find match model whereby we are able to actually manage, we can see if particular companies already exist in the system or not. So it's the same as search match for students, but in this case it's search match for companies with the ability to either merge companies at the time of actually looking at this information, or creating new companies if you like, if this company actually doesn't exist yet in the system. And trust me when I say, because I know Elmar actually has the same conversations in Denmark a number of times, people find it the normalest thing in the world to actually have new companies that they don't know yet that actually will come and say, yes, and I want to buy this and this. And then you're, as an institution, suddenly faced with a company you don't know yet. You need to enter into the system that needs to actually get an invoice number or a PO number perhaps or whatever to actually be able to manage all that. So having company find match is really important, because otherwise you would be creating the same debtor 5 times over time. So far more important even than previous education and everything else, this becomes crucial because it's about money. So company find match actually is part of the model here, as well as the ability to, okay, click on another OK button, just as well as the ability to actually do search match for the person who's actually paying for this particular education. So if your parent or your friend or whoever, your boss, whatever who is going to pay for you as a person, then it's also important that that person actually gets search match before they even go into the system. Now, search match done, everything clicked and everything working, then you would actually post a transaction, which would normally happen automatically, of course, if you're already actually figured out. And then we move on to the transaction itself, where we actually can see what is going to happen with this person. So and then we land in, this is the heart of the module, I would say. This page is ours, and we have created a model whereby we have a transaction that is consistent of one or more products bought by a person or bought by multiple people, because in some cases it's actually multiple people within one transaction that are buying a particular course or multiple courses, and that are actually also going to be paid by people. And the payers, as mentioned, do not have to match to the person who's doing the enrollment. It's just one transaction. That's important. So within one module, or sorry, within one component, we are managing the person, the transaction, the enrollment status, what they are doing, and who is paying for them. And within the payment process, we're also then managing both the posting of transactions into student financials. Not sure if anybody is student financials minded in here, but let's say it manages the posting of transactions, so the actual posting of charges, it manages posting of payments, it manages billing, it manages generation and printing of invoices, it manages waivers, it manages VAT, the whole shebang, all from one page. And the intent with that was to actually bring this to a group of people who do not like big systems. They like Excel, because actually Excel is relatively simple. Yes, your question.
Third-party contracts?
No, it doesn't, because we don't like third-party contracts. No, the intent is, sorry, there's no product manager in the house here, no. No, it doesn't, because it doesn't need to, because the actual relationship is in the transaction. We know who you are. We know that you're going to be studying with us. It's a fantastic question, thank you. We know who is going to study this particular course, and we know who is going to pay for that course, be it a company or be it a person. So the relationship is there. We don't need a third-party contract to make that relationship anymore, because it's already here, because it's linked to the same transaction. And as long as it doesn't say paid in that third column over there, the person in the enrollment tab is never going to be enrolled. Unless the institution says, well, we'll wait for the bill later on, we'll be okay, and we'll just move on. But practically speaking, the relationship is 100% clear from a, let's say, from a reconciliation point of view between who pays, who enrolls, and what transaction they're actually paying for. And this has been maybe, in hindsight, the best piece of the whole thing, to be honest. Because at INSEAD, they manage thousands and thousands of third-party contracts every year, because they have companies paying probably 80% of everything that they do. And people hated it, because it was clumsy, it was lots of work, difficult, whatever. And this makes it far simpler, because there is a relationship, there's just no third-party contract anymore. And I don't dislike third-party contracts in the traditional sense of the word, but that's not what these people do. So in this way, we are actually managing that transaction model far simpler and far more easy to manage from one page. Because as said, the people who are actually managing these processes go here. That's about where they go on a normal basis. Because from here, they can actually manage everything they want to manage. Now, let's assume for a moment that you actually have paid, or that we actually accept that your company is going to pay in 4 weeks, but the course starts next week, so we'll actually let you in. Then we are able to say, okay, let me actually just change your event enrollment status from conditional to enrolled. Now, I can do it here first, or I can actually go there, because in the end, when you enroll, you're not actually enrolling on a course or a class, you're enrolling on a campus community event. Remember those? I must say I didn't. Or at least I knew they existed, but I'd never actually done anything with it until we were looking for a solution that actually didn't require the student to be actually term activated and having a program and a plan and whatever, but we still wanted to track attendance. Because the interesting part about event management in this context is it does two things really well, actually. It manages time, so it tells you when this particular class or event or product is happening in time. It tells you where. It tells you who the professor is who is going to teach, or the instructor or whatever. And it allows you, at the level of the actual meetings happening, to say if the person was there or not. And again, think of education in relation to companies. The first thing they're going to ask is, can you give me the list of the people who were not there last week? And for that, you need a tracker of who was there and who was not there. And doing that at event level with meetings, actually say, okay, I can see that you were there in meeting 1, meeting 2, but you were not there in meeting 3 and 4, etc. So, please, of course, yes.
Does it generate the attendance rosters as well, or is it like an event-based?
No, we don't have. No, because the event rosters the attendance rosters, let me say it differently. Within the event management module, the answer is yes. When you have 10 event meetings, it will hook you up to all 10 meetings to indicate that you're going to be in all 10 meetings. The reason I was actually looking at Elmar and saying no at the very first was because when we're thinking of attendance rosters within student records, we're not using those because it's not actually there. But if you look behind the scenes, you'll find that the actual table structures within Campus Solutions are joined between the let's say the student records, attendance rosters, and it's overarching event management that is happening in Campus Community. Because that was what this was all meant for literally 25 years ago or so. The intent was to create event management, then as a spin-off became attendance rosters within student records. That went all the way and actually went to become something serious. Event management never went anywhere. And still floats around in the system, and we're really happy to use it, but it's not something that Oracle actually has put lots of effort in since. But it doesn't matter for us because it does exactly what we want. It's a simple way of actually managing an event in time and actually telling people that they're going to be attending or not. So, with the attendance defined, we are then able to actually indicate that the transaction is posted or that the transaction is finished or completed or whatever. And depending on what your business process is and how you want to actually manage and label those statuses, of course, is all configuration. But the intent is to at least indicate to yourself and your colleagues, this record is done. I'm happy, we can continue. And with that, and this person is coming to my course and has paid, etc. Or we're okay that they're going to pay later. With that, we're then able to actually create their academic progress tracker. Now, you may not be familiar with program enrollment. If you're not and you're interested, please do come to our session at 1 o'clock, as we're going to explain with Lone Star how they are using program enrollment for traditional students. But the intent of APTs, and in general academic progress trackers, is to give an individual student an overview of the courses that they have done over time to indicate what their progress is towards whatever their goal may be. Okay? So, let me click Save here. Creating the event. And then I can go to the actual academic progress tracker. Now, this is, as said, normally functionality that is used for students to actually guide them through their path, to actually give them, after 3 years, a nice undergraduate degree or something like that. But you can use it for other things as well. This student doesn't have a program and a plan and an application and student enroll and so on. But he does have an APT because he is actually connected to what Oracle at least still calls a program of study, but is not really a program of study because what it actually is our overview of products that we are selling. So we are selling pieces of education that we put into a tree, that we label, that we actually put money on, that we put timings on, that we put people on, that we put rules on, and anything else we like, because it's all possible standard vanilla functionality in Campus to do all that within this particular tree of education that we're pushing out to Salesforce or to the website or actually using in Campus. And when somebody then actually applies and actually enrolls, he gets his own individual progress tracker out of that particular tree of information. And within this, And you can see that this person actually bought from the standard continuing education, he bought photography for beginners and photo video editing as pre-recorded courses, or pre-recorded videos in this context. Within here, we can then also, using standard functionality, grade these students, actually do calculations to see if somebody after a particular number of courses has, for instance, actually gotten a micro certificate or something like that. If you look over here, for instance, here we have a definition for a company strategy certificate, which is a learning package consistent of 3 courses. If you do all 3 courses and you actually make all 3 courses, you get a certificate. We've defined this as a package. We're selling it as a package. It has a price as a package, but you can also buy the pieces individually. And they are compulsory in this context because we're in this context saying, okay, listen, the deal for $1,500 or whatever is only relevant if you buy all 3 at the same time. We could also say, you know what, you can buy any of them for $750. If you want to buy all 3, $1,500, and you're gone. So, but in essence, the intent is to say, okay, once you've done all 3, then you get a certificate. And we don't have to go into the system to calculate that ourselves, because within this system, if I go, no, click the other link, Ernst. Sorry, always the wrong link. Excuse me, my fault. If I click on that link, thank you, then you are at the actual item itself. You're actually in your product catalog looking at what this particular piece of information is that you're pushing out to people to sell. And in that particular piece, there is a link to the rules engine. And the rules engine can then start to calculate, based on the progression of the student, if the student is actually eligible for a certificate, yes or no. And that rules engine rule will just actually run on a batch process whenever you want. So you can have hundreds and hundreds of students actually going through this process, and all you do once an hour or 2 hours or once a day is actually run the process to see, okay, who should get a certificate now? And that's based on the rules engine rules that we plug into these particular items wherever we want to enable us to say, okay, calculate that this person actually should get a certificate, yes or no. So this is one piece, in this case, photography for beginners, where we are actually selling this particular pre-recorded video as part of this particular course. Now, we've added a few things to this because this is the standard functionality for program enrollment for any course. What we did was we actually added a number of things to it. We added the amount of money as a total. We've added how you can actually pay for it. We've added if you get a certificate for this particular product, if there's any external product IDs in your web shop, in your Salesforce, in your wherever you actually have this particular information as well. Is it publishable, yes or no, to the website? Would you like to have images? Well, we like to because then we can actually show them on our storefront. So different types of images in there. Product fees, which then actually are cut down into tuition fees in this context and book fees, but could be anything. And then hook up to both taxes and item types so that you can actually define specifically what you are actually pointing at for what. And when the transaction happens, everything is picked up from here to know what the finance part should be looking like. And then, of course, also a number of product tags where we actually are able to tag things so that we understand what this particular course is about. Please.
How do you manage any discounts for courses in terms of discounts as an individual course and discount when a group registers?
Now, so discounts in general are managed with either rules or with discount vouchers or codes, so to say. So either the institution literally sends an email to somebody saying, look, here's the, if you type in this today, then you're going to get 10% off. Or there's actually a rules engine rule that actually kicks off when you either the web service comes in or when the application form comes in or when the person actually enters the transaction to kick off and say, okay, is this person, for instance, a paying alumni? Is this person actually, whatever, in some way special to us so that you actually should get a discount? When it gets to discounts for multiple people, at the moment at least, at INSEAD, every course sold to a company, in which case we are talking about, let's say 10, 50, or whatever, how many people, is well, they call it custom made. So it then becomes for them at least, it's then a negotiation. I would call it that. Let's not call it a game, but let's call it a negotiation between the company and the institution to say, what does this cost if I actually put 50 people on this course?
But then if you've already defined that, and so if 15 people which cost?
Yeah.
Or it could be like a seasonal discount.
Absolutely.
These courses you get at a 30% discount.
Absolutely. And let's say, and I'm going to say, I like the rules engine in this context because the rules engine as a framework delivered in Oracle by Oracle in Campus allows you, I'm going to say relatively easily, to actually manage those rules from the front end, especially if you're only focusing on, for instance, changing percentages and so on, or changing dates. So in that way, it actually remains very flexible, but it also actually gives you endless capabilities of actually calculating the discounts. But we're calculating the discounts, as I said, based on either rules or on vouchers that actually come in. So we're almost done. I'm almost done. Time is almost done. I need to click this button. So once a product actually is a product and it's publishable, you haven't told anybody yet when you're actually going to offer it. It's just a product. It's like a course. A course is a course is a course. It doesn't actually go anywhere. It just is a course. You need to actually create a class to define something to happen at a particular moment, in a particular room, in a particular professor, frequency, and everything else. Same we do. And we have actually taken the event management module from Oracle, extended it slightly. No invasive coding, I can tell you, 0. And I'm proud of that, I would say. And in this event management part, we are actually defining the start date and the end date of a particular event for that particular time. And the product then actually becomes a relationship to the event ID and relates itself and says, okay, I am photography for beginners, and this time, on this particular case, we're starting on that date and we're ending on that date. And I want to take 1 minute to explain this because this is the question that I get all the time when I'm having these conversations. How do I hook up my continuing education back to my traditional education? Because I want to actually be able to sell something which is an undergraduate course for 15 people. Let's take your example. 15 people are going to come in through continuing education. The other 500 are just going to be there because their program actually tells them to be there. With the career, the term, and the class, which do not mean anything in our world, but mean something in the traditional world, we are able to hook up this particular event to that class number. So if I say that we are going to we're going to hook this up to an undergraduate course happening in 0900, and I'm just going to choose anything, right? It's not going to be the right number, I'm sure it's not, but with this relationship, we've now actually said to the system, when you are enrolling people on that particular 2240 event, you're actually referring to a class that is happening and actually is happening in 0900 and has a class number of 1060. And then from a query or page or professor self-service or anything kind of perspective, we can start to merge the groups of people that are coming in through this route with the people who are coming in from this route. Because the relationship is there on a one-to-one basis between this class number and that event ID. I can see people going, oh. It is a relationship which is one-on-one. Anybody enrolling on that number at the top, the event ID, are actually just as well recognizable as being enrolled into 1060. They're not actually enrolled in 1060. They're not in student enroll, but they are, through the relationship of those numbers, connected. And that means that any query or any view where we show the professor the attendance list or the grade roster or anything else, we can merge those two populations, and the person that is teaching doesn't know. I don't know if you're here for however you are here. I just know you're in my room. So I can then, in that way, connect the two worlds very easily and manage that. Please, yes.
So we have like an academic transcript that's looking at the student enrollment data.
Yes, next question, yes. Yes, be careful, yes. Okay, yes. No, you can ask me.
Yeah, so you pull all that enrollment information in that transcript. So something like this wouldn't show up.
No, it wouldn't show up, no. It wouldn't show up unless you actually wanted it to show, but then you would have to actually amend your query for the transcript to include this kind of enrollments. My only comment in return is, how many transcripts are you actually running for continuing ed students? Maybe a lot or not. It depends really on the business process and the university, so to say, but technically it's not a problem at all. It just means that you need to pull it out of a different set of tables to get the information out onto the transcript. So. Yes.
Are they each getting a new event?
Yes, 100%. Yes.
And then next year you offer them again 20 times?
Yes, it got 20 new numbers. The number is forever, the number is not related to time. That's the beauty of it. We don't care about terms. We have a number, and that number is unique forever.
Unless if we wanted to, we could create a configuration for photography on the class undergrad.
Yes.
But we may not offer it to the undergrad, but we offer it here and always link it to
But-
the class number. Just so if,
I understand it's actually scary to jump into the pool at the deep end, but I'm going to say you don't need them anymore. I'm not going to say you cannot create them, because I'm flattered, thank you very much for your comment, because interestingly, when I was speaking to Carol in the first months, she always came back to this particular comment. Oh, we're going to create the class numbers afterwards anyway, Ernst. I'm like, why are you creating the class numbers? Nobody's going to be enrolled. So you're creating the class number purely from a curriculum management point of view to put into the schedule or something, but there's nobody going to be enrolled ever because they're going to be in the event ID. So it's not necessary. I'm not going to say it's not working. It works fine.
I was just wondering from
Yeah.
the person who's teaching a class wants to know for this year, who's coming.
Yes, but that merge happens because you actually create a view that actually takes the information from the event and the information from student enroll and creates a view for the person. That person doesn't know where the information comes from and doesn't need to know.
But they know what the difference is.
No, they don't need to, but they don't know what who cares if that part of the room is actually continuing it and that part's not? Professor doesn't care, he needs to teach. He doesn't need to actually check the payments or anything, so it's not relevant in that context. No, please. No, I'm here for 2 days, so you are absolutely able to find me, hopefully, or get to our drinks tonight and discuss it with me. It's absolutely fine. So, last steps, and then I'm actually done as well, and then time is up as well. So, anything we're managing at product level, we can actually override at event level. So, let's say seasonal discounts, things that actually are last minute, whatever, they're all actually managed at event level as overrides if we like to, so to say. And anything that we manage in here, in the end then gets pushed down into the actual standard vanilla campus event management meetings and campus meetings with attendance. Now, that's it. Well, I was going to say it is actually it. I haven't talked about taxes. I've talked about taxes enough. Nobody likes taxes anyway, but yeah, no, I know. I wanted to shout out at least that we've got a number of customers on this particular product, which actually are not just small ones, also big ones, but actually are managing this for real every day in the week at different institutions, both Denmark, as said, from Elmer, as well as in Holland, as well as in INSEAD, so to say. And yeah, I hope I have shown that you can actually manage these things in campus without actually having to go through admissions and student records and everything else with it, and still be able to manage the whole process, including invoicing.
I was curious, what do they do for content delivery? So once you've paid and you've collected the money, sometimes it's not a pre-recorded class session, sometimes it is, they need to use them. You know, so is your product already linked to like Canvas or something else for delivery, or?
Now, here we go into an interesting I'm going to say, our product as such is not connected to Canvas. If your campus system is connected to Canvas, the information can flow over to Canvas, I would say. When it gets to the actual educational content, it's a different discussion, of course, of what are you storing in Campus about the content and what are you storing in Canvas as such. But the intent, and this is, for instance, what's happening at INSEAD, where they have 3 different LMSs, so to say. No, they do, because they have, for live virtual classes is different than the other things and so on. All of those have integrations from Campus to there, and information gets pushed through. So enrollments that are happening in the events are pushed through as being enrollments on those classes and then get pushed over to Canvas as such, yes. Sorry, yes.
I have a question. So in your example, you showed where a student goes out to the storefront and enrolls in the class, and they have the ability to pick somebody who's going to pay for them.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Do you have just the opposite, where an employer or a vendor goes in and goes to the storefront, then they pick the number of students that they're going to go into that class?
Yeah. That's what they do in Denmark, yes. Elmer's nodding already here, but yes. No, it does also work the other way around, yes. But I will say with that, it's not that it's not actually possible. It's possible. The only comment I'm going to make is, in many cases, the HR director phones up the institution, says, hi, I would like to actually discuss this and this and this for a custom course that I would like to create with you. Then they go into the whole process. End of the process is, here's the Excel sheet with the 50 people. Good luck. But in the context of a company saying, okay, I would like to have my 3 developers actually learn something, or my 3 consultants learn something, then yeah, absolutely, yes.
Building blocks I saw was great. So if a student is not registered into a course, where is the grade being captured?
The grades are captured within program enrollment. In program enrollment, you don't need a course to actually store a grade. When program enrollment was created, the intent was to create a flexible grading model that could actually capture any kind of grade, and not just one, but as many as you liked. So you define a result type, as it's called. That result type actually has a grading basis attached, and that actually then gets the marks. And because program enrollment, and I'm actually thankful for it, because it was actually created as a, let's say, a wrapper around the standard course and class enrollment tables, it's not actually hard connected. There's no hard connection between program enrollment and student enroll, which is sometimes very difficult to manage, as some of us know in this room. But in this case, it's beautiful, because you do not need to be enrolled to actually have an item in your academic progress tracker, and you actually can have a grade on there without ever actually being enrolled, because the table that it's stored in is not linked to student enroll at all. It just actually says, okay, I'm a result type, and which is called did you pass or not pass, or whatever it is that you actually would like to store as a grade. So, yeah. And that works as well for your traditional students, guys. Program enrollment is much more flexible in that context. Very handy. I'm going to say thanks. Thanks for all the questions. Thanks for all the discussion. I hope you enjoyed the discussions and the session. We're doing 3 more sessions. At 1 o'clock today, we're doing a program enrollment and guided pathways with Lone Star College. Tomorrow, we're actually going to be talking about Connect, a communication platform that allows people to communicate to all kinds of different sources or different, targets for students and others. And then as well about admissions management.
Actually, for the 4th, the admissions management, our customer is actually here, California State University, Northridge.